Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today I'm reviewing The Devil All the Time from Netflix. The Devil All the Time is a new psychological thriller that has just premiered on Netflix. It stars Robert Pattinson, Tom Holland, Bill Skarsgård, and a ton of other really well-known and really up-and-coming actors that are in Hollywood. It's also directed by Antonio Campos, who had directed a couple episodes of The Sinner, a show that I really enjoyed that we also have reviewed on this channel. And this movie just oozes of atmosphere, same way The Sinner does. It's very similar in its tone, in my opinion. This movie is all about tone, and I think it is captured perfectly, whether it be the score, the acting, the overall cinematography. It really evokes emotions. Specifically in me, when I was watching it, it just fills you with just dread and sorrow and just the hopelessness. And maybe that's not something that you'd enjoy watching a movie, especially during these times, but it definitely accomplishes what it seeks out to do when it comes to tone. Another thing that really helps add to the overall feel of the film is that it has really well done production design, in my opinion. The costuming, I think, is really well done. The film is based off of a novel, and it takes place during the 50s and 60s, and it's dealing with a small rural town, this group of people that live in this rural area in West Virginia and Ohio, and kind of the influences on their life. While I'd say Tom Holland's character is the lead of the film, you also get a long beginning part of the film that's talking about his family and his upbringing and where he comes from. And this movie really does drive home the idea of being molded by the world around you, rather be nature over nurture, these kind of things, these big themes that are working on in this film. For example, Arvin, who's Tom Holland's character, his father, who's played by Bill Skarsgård, is showing him, life is kind of a difficult struggle. It's a battle, and you need to fight back. You need to show that you're tough, and it really molds who he is as a character, and you get to see that as the story moves along. I think that Tom Holland's character has a phenomenal story arc. He's very, very well written out and very well fleshed out into the film. I will say, though, the movie does have some pacing issues. It's very, very long. In the beginning of the movie, it feels a little bit slow, but in my opinion, it's very purposeful. You do get a lot of character development with him. You get to understand what's going on with him beneath the surface, because as Tom Holland's character starts to grow up and he's living his life without his parents, you do get to see why he acts the way he acts. He's very subtle in why he does the things he does, and if you didn't have that about 45 minutes to an hour explaining why he is the way he is and where he came from, I don't think some of the moments in the film would have as much impact as they do. And like I said, this movie does dive into why we are who we are and how we get to these points in our lives, and I really think that it's extremely well done when it comes to driving that point forward. You get to see the different things in Arvin's life that made him who he is, whether it be his faith, his family, his setting, the town he grew up in, the people that he grew close to, and it definitely knows how to hit hard when it comes to those relationships and him dealing with some of the struggles in his life. This movie strikes a really good balance between peace and melancholy and then extreme violence and darkness, and I do like the contrast back and forth. It also uses a pretty interesting score to, I think, drive those points further home. You have some really, really soft, like gospel-esque sounding music, juxtaposed to some extremely violent events. This movie is really graphic, a lot more graphic than I expected to be in a lot of different ways, whether it be sexually, physically, verbally. There's a lot of just violent acts in this film, and it really it's a gut punch sometimes, especially when some of these things happen. Like I said, probably the biggest issue with the movie is just the overall pacing. It's really a slog to get through sometimes because it's so dark and it's so bleak and it's so unforgiving to these characters that you grow to appreciate and you grow to understand. And it's frustrating seeing people struggle that way, but it shows a reality. It shows a life in a life full of difficulty. It's not just all rainbow and sunshine. But that being said, the movie is a little bit bloated in my opinion. It's biting off a lot. And I haven't read the novel, but obviously it's really trying to dive into everything that's in this novel. It doesn't feel like it wants to leave anything out. But you have characters like Jason Clarke's character who's in this, who plays a serial killer. You have Sebastian Stan's character, and it's just kind of strange because you get these really quick jumps back and forth to these side characters, and you don't get time to get nearly invested in them. And when the story all kind of comes together, all these different interwinding stories come together at the end, it doesn't feel earned, in my opinion. It just kind of happens. They're just together, and it all came together in this interesting way. But I don't know. I think it's just because there's so much happening, and we're jumping forward and backwards in time. It's also told mostly through narration. While you do get a lot of good dialogue, some really well-written dialogue, in my opinion, you get a lot explained to you. You jump to a new scene or a new time period, and they're explaining what's happening. You're getting told over a narration that this is why the characters feel the way they do. This is their internal mind that's happening. and they don't really let you figure that out for yourself. I might have liked to have a little more nuance to it instead of just being told, this is why Arvin feels this way, this is why the pastor feels this way. So that I didn't absolutely love about the structure of the film. Overall, I thought the performances were phenomenal. I think it's probably Tom Holland's best performance. I think it's one of Robert Pattinson's best performances. He has just been amazing in the past couple years. He's in some A24 films that I really enjoy. I thought he was great in Tenet. I cannot wait to see what he does in Batman. So definitely some really great performances. You get Tom Holland as such a subdued, just kind of rageful person, someone who's dealing with a lot internally. They're struggling between his father's anger and rage and his mother's kindness. You get that conflict, and you see it in his eyes, you see it in his emotion, his struggle. It's really nuanced but really well done. And then Robert Pattinson on the other side plays a pastor who is just insane and over the top and just horrible, a horrible person that's manipulating people and their faith. And that's another thing. This movie really does dive into the influences of faith on someone's life, whether it be negative or positive, and how people can use these things for good and evil. You get to see both sides of the coin when it comes to the people dealing in these situations. And I mentioned the cinematography being really well done. There are multiple scenes in the movie that you really feel immersed in what's happening. Particularly, there's an early scene involving a pastor who's giving a sermon, and it's spinning around him. You're seeing the different people, and it feels almost like one continuous shot, and you're in this whirlwind of just fire and brimstone, and you're being thrown into the idea of how these people felt being told about these things being in this small rural setting. And also they capture this small rural town, and it feels very authentic. It feels like it is a small kind of dying town in the 50s and 60s. But like I said, I just feel like it is overall a really well put together movie. While it may struggle sometimes with pacing and overall focus when it comes to the story and doing it in a way that isn't necessarily a narration over a course of events, I do think the acting was amazing. I think the cinematography was incredible. I think the actual atmosphere of the movie is something that just raised it to another level. I think if it were a box standard film with some average acting, it wouldn't live up to my expectations, but I think that it excelled in the parts that it really wanted to excel in. So if I were to rate this movie, I would give it an 8 out of 10, a lot better than I expected to be. I'm interested to see some of the kind of negative and mixed reviews I've seen for this movie, and it feels like it really hinges on just how dreary and depressing the movie is, just how, just visceral some of the things are in the movie, and the overall pacing of the movie, which I understand are valid criticisms, but, definitely better than I thought it was going to be. So if you checked out The Devil All the Time on Netflix, let me know what you thought about it. Maybe you didn't like as much as I did. If you're someone who I think wants to check out a casual film, or if you're going into it being, I love Tom Holland from Spider-Man, and you go to watch this, that's not the performance at all, or you're thinking it's going to be something a little more, subtle than it is, it's pretty dark and it's pretty graphic, and I think it might catch some people by surprise. So let me know what you thought about it. Leave those comments down below, and see you guys next time.